Welcome to the 8th episode of the Safety First podcast. In conjunction with the International Women's Day on the 8th of March, this episode of the Safety First podcast is focusing on how women in safety is done around the world. Hi everybody, I'm Kajol, and my co-host today is Amanda Tan. And today we have three guests who has joined us around the world. We have Miss Bonnie Yao from Hong Kong, Miss Alanna Paul from Australia, and Miss Visha Lam from Singapore. Hi ladies.
And welcome to the podcast.
So nice to be here, and what a lovely room of women to celebrate International Women's Day. So I'm Alanna Ball, the founder and collaborator in Women in Safety, a professional organisation really designed to empower, transform and inspire women working in health and safety to really up-level where they're at in their career and have a community of other like-minded women to really call on, to pull on, and to continue to grow. So it's really exciting to be here and talk to you all about, how we do and how we embrace women in safety around the world.
Hi, everybody. This is Bonnie from the Hong Kong Occupational Safety and Health Council. We are the statutory body in Hong Kong focusing on promoting occupational health and safety. We also do research. We do some kind of consultancy, but we are not a private company. We are kind of established by government, but we have got arm's length with the government such that we can do things independently and solely from the perspective of the occupational safety and health.
Not forgetting our next guest is none other than Miss Michelle Lam.
Hello Amanda, hello ladies. I'm very glad I'm being here again this year. Thank you to Amanda, thank you Kajol. So I didn't change my role. I'm still with ThyssenKrupp, leading the WSH function. I'm the head of WSH for the Asia Pacific Africa region, stationed in Singapore. So ThyssenKrupp is an international group of company. So the headquarters is in Germany. So I look after the whole region, including Middle East now as well. So I didn't change my role. I'm still who I am.
That's great. And I'm pretty sure our listeners here are like very wowed by your three names already. So thank you so much for joining us, ladies.
Hi everyone. So I have an interesting question. I really want to know, when did your journey in women empowerment begin? Maybe we can start with Bonnie.
Actually, before we start to discuss anything, I'm not saying that we need not empower men, but we need a different perspectives and diversity. So before I joined the Occupational Safety and Health Council, I must say I was not aware of the need of women empowerment. Because during my college years in the university, actually the general observation was that 60% of the students were female. And then when I joined the government as an administrative officer, the ratio of men to women is around 45 to 55. But then when I joined the Occupational Safety and Health Council as the executive, usually I'm the only female on stage, and the safety work was full of men voices. Then we note that we need to start working. And even in council, the women only accounted for around 30 to 40% of the senior professional posts. So that's when I began. And so if we could encourage more women to join the industry and support them to rise to their full potential, I think that we may bring our OSH performance to even higher levels.
Wow, that is very captivating. I really think that women should join this industry, and with ladies like y'all, the empowerment and everything is just great. What about you, Alanna?
Oh, Bonnie, you speak music to my ears. Certainly for me, I grew up in a really industrial town in central Queensland here in Australia, and saw some of those women's empowerment challenges quite young, where, the boys that I was going to school with were offered apprenticeships and they went about these really industrial kind of paths. And those opportunities really didn't present themselves for women. Now, I was very fortunate to have a really strong, I guess, leader in my mother, and I saw that she broke a lot of barriers in her own career. So I think it kind of lit this fire, but it really wasn't until I started in health and safety and I really was thrown in the middle of the jungle in Papua New Guinea with a site full of men. I was the only female on site and ridiculed left, right and centre for being, the only woman on site. And I kind of just felt this real isolation of, hang on a minute, how did this happen? How am I in this position? So I think it really fostered this need of finding other women to connect with, that, this can't be, I can't be the only one in this position. I can't be the only one that's feeling this. So really set about kind of finding those connections. But I think, it really did, that fire was lit in my belly from quite a young age. And I think it's just continued to grow and, adapt and flex. And I agree, Bonnie, that it can't ever just be about empowering women. But certainly if we do it, then I think we'll get greater mindsets in organisations.
Thank you, Alanna. I really agree with you and Bonnie in this. What about you, Michelle?
I think I and Bonnie are in the Asia context, so wherever we go, definitely we are the only female. I think I also shared that last year as well. So I also feel, Alina, because I'm from the oil and gas industry, so where we are is all surrounded by men. But slowly but surely, I mean, for the past years, we have looking at the industry, how it evolving. You tend to see more and more women embarking to the industrial world to take out a man role, and more acceptance to diversity. So women are there now, slowly but surely. So again, the word is slowly. So although we didn't achieve a 50% yet, but both hands clap actually. On another hand, I would think women also need to understand the health and safety job is not a sexy job as well. And for the men, definitely, because we are surrounding the man is always supporting us in the workplace as well. That's why slowly but surely you can see increasing of women empowerment in this journey.
Okay, interesting to know. I think it's a very fair observation that we see in Asia, especially women in safety. It's a very big buzzword now, not just occupational safety and health, I think the workforce in general. Do you think by highlighting women in safety or by highlighting women in general, are we downplaying the other gender in safety? Can we start with Alanna?
I think it's important to note the other genders in safety, and I think we are seeing again this diversity when it comes to LGBTQ plus. I will always get that wrong, but I think it is just recognizing that we are playing in a very, very diverse world, and what that diversity of thought brings regardless of gender. So I think it's not necessarily that highlighting women in safety is a bad thing. It's that whole notion that we won't ever rise to what we, like if we don't see it, we won't rise to it. So if we see other women rising in these sometimes quite challenging environments, which, we've all been in, we would never have this diversity of thought. So it's about showing other women, and that's what I try to achieve with Women in Safety, is really sharing some of these journeys and going, we've all had really difficult journeys at times, but we can overcome. We can feel empowered together. We can have conversations that bring courage to the table. And I think it certainly is not about downplaying the other gender. It's just about highlighting what you can achieve. And we need that for everyone in the world, I think.
Yeah, it's interesting you point out LGBTQ plus. The acceptance of this is also very varied in the Asia region as well. So I'm just putting this out there. I just want to listen to Bonnie from Hong Kong. Any thoughts about our women in safety downplaying the other gender?
I think that actually the mindset should be that actually men and women complement each other. And if we can work well together, actually, I think that we have a synergetic effect and we can do even greater things. I echo what Michelle just said, that actually the men also support us in doing what we are doing. When you are asking, actually a picture came to my mind is when I'm being recruited as the executive director, the whole panel are all men. My bosses later told me that actually I am the few percentage of women there to apply for the post. So I think that when they are hiring me, it's not that they are downplaying any gender. We are just talking about that actually men and women should be working together to promote the health and safety at the workplace.
Exactly. And from Michelle, what do you have to say about highlighting women in safety? And do you think that this is, again, downplaying the other gender?
Definitely it's not downplaying. Like I mentioned, they support us. To be honest, in the workplace, the more diverse we are, the more we learn from each other, and share different view, work together, miracle can happen, and we can even conquer more. So I won't say it's downplaying. It's more of collaboration together. And also like what Bonnie said, my boss who hired me wanted women to be in this role because they wanted a more soft approach in the workplace to talk to the men to neutralize the situation as well. So you see the men support women and they hire us, just like Bonnie case.
I cannot agree more. It doesn't really matter, does it? Like, it doesn't really matter whether you're a male, female. We don't have any line drawn just because you are of a different gender. And hopefully, the more conservative sides of Asia will be able to adopt this mindset as well.
Yeah, that is why also WSHAsia now we are also having an award for women in safety in particular as well. It's great to have you on the panel as well. I would like to move on to the next question. Like we see the word success, it can be measured very differently. But being successful women of your own roles in the industry, how do you think we can define successful women in a safety environment? And what do you think it takes to get there? Maybe we can start off with Alanna. What do you think?
You know, the key to success is going to be defined by everyone very differently. But for me, I think the success is going to come from what we can achieve as that collective. And I think it's going to take a couple of things. I think for me, one, curiosity. To be curious to ask what's happening in other areas. You know, for us to be on this call and find out what's happening in Hong Kong and Singapore and Australia, to have that curiosity to ask the questions, whether that be on your site with your leadership team or outside, you know, that continual learning and that curiosity. I think collaboration is so key, and the one that really you know, for me, that success comes from being brave, because I think, you know, we've all got to the role we're in because we've been able to take some brave decisions. We've made some brave choices at times, and we're brave enough to call out when something isn't right. And I think for us to be successful as a profession and as women in this profession, it's going to take us being brave to call out behaviours or standards that just are not there.
Oh, wow. Curiosity, collaboration, and bravery. I totally agree with you. Being in this industry is almost as challenging, but it's always good to learn something new along the challenges and obstacles that come with it. What about you, Bonnie?
I think that for me, success tends to be the one who can brought about positive safety changes to the workplace. One should be able to inspire, to persuade, and even transform the workplace. Actually, I got an example here. We've got a frontline construction worker who is a single mother of 3. And we got to know her because she won the Best OSH Employee Award around 3 or 4 years ago. So what she did was that actually one day, while she was working on the 7th floor of an under construction building, cleaning the debris. So you can see that she is a very frontline person. And then she fell from the 7th floor to the podium. She was in a coma and in critical condition, and she stayed in the intensive care ward for many, many days. What she told us afterwards is that when she thinks she heard her daughters calling her, crying, and then she said that, oh, I'm the breadwinner. I must get back to my daughters and my son. So she recovered, she regained consciousness. And then when she was strong enough to get back to the workplace, she strongly believed in that safety really should come first. You should always do all the safety precautions and all that. And started to advocate for safety and advocate for precautions in the workplace. And because she got the first-hand story, it's very convincing. And she's very committed to this. And then she worked with the labor union. And then she also used her free time to go to the other construction sites to advocate for safe behavior, for wearing harness, doing all the precautions for the love of your family. And it's very touching. Women had got the soft, tender skills to talk to men and women. And then she was very successful. And I think that this makes her a very good leader.
Thank you, Bonnie. Thank you for sharing that story. But I'd like to ask you, what actually made you choose the safety industry?
It's a very meaningful job. It's one of the very few industry that you can do a very fulfilling job, that you are saving people. And we are trying to give them a full family life. The well-being of people is not about money, it's not about status. It's about you have a healthy and safe environment, and then you can be happy with your family, your friends, and all that, all because you are safe and you're healthy at work.
Thank you, Bonnie. Michelle, let's get to you. What do you define as a successful woman in the safety environment?
I mean, both Alanna and Bonnie already cover most of it. To be honest, to be a successful woman in safety, we really must be brave plus vocal. You're able to stand up and say no, or even stand up to say stop work. A lot of time, especially Asian women, they tend to stay quiet, behind someone, hiding behind, there's a man. So I would think as a successful safety woman, we will be able to stand up straight, able to say no. And of course, most importantly, like what Bonnie had mentioned, to embark the positive mindset, safety culture to the respective industry, to the workplace, to wherever we go.
Thank you, Michelle.
Wow, I think I learned a lot. Michelle, you mentioned about how women take the softer approach, which is important because we hope everyone will take back the message of working safely and going back to their own families. Now, we see that all three of you are leading safety professionals. So what do you think safety professionals in general can do to help embrace women in safety? Maybe we can start with you, Michelle. What do you think it takes for safety professionals in Singapore to create this inclusive environment?
So I must be very honest. Women, on the other hand, must know that a safety job is not a sexy job. We don't wear high heels going around in the construction site and things like that. So the woman aspect, they must know the job well. And I fully agree, this is a very noble job. We stop, we intervene before things happen. So that is the sexy part of the job, I will mention, compared to us dressing as high heel in the construction site. But like I mentioned, the men around us actually support us a lot. I always, for example, I go audit, is always with gentlemen around me. So they will actually go first. Or like going down the staircase, they will let us go first. Or they will remind. So they actually inclusive already women into the workforce. Just that on another hand, like I mentioned, women really need to understand the expectation of the work and welcoming women to be on board.
Thanks, Michelle. And for you, Alanna?
Yeah, I come from a bit of a different, I guess, school of thought on it. I think it's, for me, that respect for each other, firstly, because I think if we just respect that we all have good days, we all have bad days, we all have different experiences and backgrounds, we're going to have respect for a whole person. So I think respect is really important, but also the recognition that biologically and chemically, men and women are just built differently. And I think we have the sides of the brain, we have masculine and feminine energy that we can bring out. You know, Michelle, I'm sure there's been days that you've been on site that you really dig into that masculine energy to be like, you will listen to me, which is not really where the feminine comes in most of the time, right? We do come with that more nurturing side. And I think it is just recognizing that we are built differently and that we bring some very different parts to the job. And that, as you said, Michelle, that both hands clap. I love that, because I think it is just that respect that we won't ever get anywhere unless we start to recognize that we are different. Difference is okay. And recognize that we bring that whole person to work and we all come with different skills and experience. I think that's how we really get that inclusivity and that diversity in the workplace, that we respect people for who they are as their whole person.
Yeah, I actually echo what Alanna said about, women and men are built differently. Actually, we need to be sensitive about this. When we visited the training center, I think it's in Korea, that, we tried the free fall with the harness. And one of my female colleagues, she was separated from the harness because the harness was built for men. And she was so thin and slender that If she was in the construction site, that would be a fatal accident. We really need to be sensitive. We need to think about whether that could cater for both men and women, because we are really built differently. Actually, it's just for a very down-to-earth facilities like the toilet facilities. In Hong Kong, we are getting hotter, a little bit hotter now because of the climate change. We advocate for rest time as well as drink adequate water. And the lady said, no, if you are not providing adequate toilet facilities, we won't drink, because if we drink, then we need to find a toilet, but there's no toilet around, or there's not adequate toilet around. That's why we need to provide the facilities.
Basic human needs, right? That I think, from a manufacturer's designing equipment, I know there's a few manufacturers over here in Australia that are looking at women's PPE specifically, rather than it just being a male cut is how we're making sure. But I think that fall protection is an interesting one. But I completely agree. Those core basics, let's get some of those right in some circumstances.
Just going back to what Bonnie just mentioned. Bonnie, how do you think safety leaders, now we talk about safety leaders, can prioritize gender equality in their workplaces?
I think that we really need to commit to making gender equality a core value. And the core value should subsumed under all the human resource programs, such as from hiring to personal development, to teamwork, to training, to pay and advancement. Because some of the companies, they will say that, they would save a little bit of money if two men go together, because then they can stay at the same room, to some training or to some overseas site visits and all that. And we think that actually we should advocate equal opportunities for men and women. If they can persistently do this, we can achieve real gender equality.
For you, Michelle, what do you think?
Bonnie have covered everything I wanted to say, so I really echo her. But to be very honest, in this aspect, I would say giving more opportunity out to find the right people to the job. Not so much per se of gender to me here. Like when I always want to hire junior safety representative, I always have HR professional come to me. Oh, you must look at their qualification, first class honor degree. And in my heart, no, I'm looking at someone has safety at heart. And it's not a paper documentation to tell me, hey, he's the A star, she's the A star student. No, because in doing a safety role, you really must have the safety at in your heart.
Wow, that is really eye-opening. I think you just spoke to most of the young safety professionals who want to apply for the safety industry. What do you think, Alanna?
I completely agree. I am so much about what comes from the heart, because I think it just creates such authenticity. But I think also when we think about kind of what I said at the beginning about how did leaders show in themselves, lead from the front, how are they showing up? How are they talking about that diversity? How are they showing that they have diverse thought, that they see their team, that they're already, how do they put into practice what they do already? How do they lead in that diverse space? Diversity of thinking, allowing other leaders to lead. So I think it's, we can prioritize it with policy, by all means, I'm all for that. But I think it's what we can do now is lead from the front and show that if there are other women working in safety, how do we voice that? Again, it's about being brave and communicating that we're all going to face these challenges, but collectively we overcome them. So lead from the front, be brave enough to share your voice, because I think that will start to prioritize any sort of gender equality in the workplace.
Thank you, Alanna.
Yeah.
But before we move forward, I'd like to ask you one question, because I know that you pointed out in some of your articles that I've read about you. I just want to ask you, what inspired you to start Women in Safety?
Look, I was really struggling with that. I did not have that community of other women to call upon and say, this is really hard right now. And I thought there would be 2 or 3 of us catching up for a coffee and discussing different issues and how did you overcome this challenge? And look, we've now got over 2,000 members in Australia, Asia and New Zealand, and running webinars to continue to empower people, because I think this whole conversation about empowering women in safety is exactly what I do day to day, because I live and breathe it. I'm so passionate about, leading from the front in this. So yeah, it was I didn't have it. I needed this space to have these conversations. So I love this conversation. It has me buzzing.
So with that being said, we have come to the end of the podcast today. So I'd like to say thank you, Bonnie, Alanna, and Michelle for joining us. And we would like to, and we also would like to wish you Happy International Women's Day. And I think, Alanna, today we can put up our balloons and stringers and say, yes, we did it.